Hey everyone, this is Dr. Casey Johnson. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to the Unlock Wellness podcast. I know you're going to love today's episode with Briana Miller. Briana is doing some amazing work, so I'm excited to have her on to share a story with you guys. If you've been loving the Unlock Wellness podcast, be sure to jump onto iTunes, subscribe, and write a review. It really helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate all of the feedback and support. Also, be sure to follow me on social media to keep up with the latest podcast episodes. The best way to connect with me is on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. My username across the board is at Dr. Casey Johnson. That's DrKaseyJohnson. You can also check out my website at drkaseyjohnson.com. It has all of the past podcast episodes and more information about each guest under the Listen tab. While you're on my site, be sure to check out the Shop tab, where you can check out my first book of my Healthy Children's Book series and learn about the Unlock Wellness Project, which supplies a wellness bag to a child in need for each book purchased. Thank you again for listening. I hope this episode leaves you feeling inspired to start making positive changes for your health. Now it's time for today's episode. I hope you love my conversation with Briana Miller. Welcome to the Unlock Wellness Podcast. I'm Dr. Casey and excited for today's guest. I'm here with Briana Miller. And Briana is a blogger and specializes in plant-based diet transition. She's doing some awesome work in the plant-based world, so I'm excited to have her on to share a story with you guys. But Briana, thank you so much for taking time to come on. I'm excited to have you.
Hello. Yes. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm also excited to talk about some great plant-based stuff.
Yes. So before we jump into everything that you're working on, why don't you start with your backstory? First off, where you're from and what your wellness looks like just growing up as a kid.
Okay. Yeah. So I am originally from Toronto, Canada. I was actually born in Ottawa and then grew up in Toronto, and I have been living back and forth in the United States from Florida to Alabama to Ohio over the last 2.5 years. And currently I'm in Daphne, Alabama. But yeah, so a little history on my kind of health journey and my diet transition personally. I grew up in a household with parents who definitely took health very seriously. Both of my parents were athletes growing up and actually decided when I was very young that they wanted to start their own business, and that was in the soccer industry. So they started a private soccer training academy in Ontario.
That's cool.
And so, yeah. So being from the athletic world and both being physically active themselves as well, diet and nutrition was always kind of relevant in my upbringing. So my mom being the, primary chef, I will say, she definitely made a lot of, home cooked meals, never really had junk food in the house. Very rarely did we have kind of like, those sweet treats and that sort of thing. As we got older, she obviously became a little bit more lenient, but I mean, even drinking pop, which I know in the States, you guys call it soda, but, we weren't even really like allowed to drink pop until we were, 12 or 13. And, I'd get to school and try to trade people for my lunch snacks, trade my cut up carrots for a Dunkaroos or something. No one really wanted to take me home. But yeah, so I think that nutrition was definitely, and like healthy eating was always pretty, relevant, I guess, in our day-to-day lives as I was being raised. And then as I got older, I was a dancer and a soccer player at highly competitive levels. So ensuring that I was, eating properly for my physical activity, I was very aware of that from a young age as well. And then I kind of just started to do a little bit of research. I started to become fascinated. I worked in a restaurant starting at the age of 14. And, I would see these meals coming out, and I always really loved cooking. My sister and I would watch the Food Network from the time we were like 6 or 7 years old. My mom would put cartoons on for us and come out of her office an hour later and we would have the Food Network on. So we always took a very strong interest in cooking and in food. So the more I learned about food, the more I realized, what was actually going into food and kind of how it made me feel and what benefits I was getting from specific food items and that sort of thing. So when I turned 15, I read a book, and you'll have to excuse my language, but it's actually the book title. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this.
Oh, no, go for it.
Okay. It's called Skinny Bitch.
Yep.
And two girls wrote it. Have you read the book?
You know what? I haven't, but I've heard of it, and I had a friend that read it, and it's funny because a podcast guest that came on maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago, that was kind of her into the plant-based world as well. So it's just funny.
Yeah, that's too funny. Yeah. So I think although I know, vegetarianism and some veganism was starting to kind of come out around that time, because that would have been 12 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Was that when the book was released? Was it 12 years ago?
It would have been around that time. Yeah. I mean, okay. if not 12, maybe 13 years ago, because I don't think it came out long before I got my hands on it. But a friend recommended it to me, a girl that I worked with at the restaurant, and who I actually also danced with her. And because I always had this weird thing about eating meat off of the bone, like chicken wings or ribs and that sort of thing. It always creeped me out. I always had a weird feeling about it. So when I read this book, it kind of gives you insight. I mean, it's a very, not dramatic, but it definitely gives you the impactful impression of the dairy and meat industry that they're trying to get across, if that makes sense.
Right. But in like a doable way, right? Because it does have like science and stuff mixed in as well, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, there's tons of facts in there and lots of information that is factual and scientifically based, but they definitely do give you some details too. Not to the same extent as some of the documentaries out there.
Right.
But it does give you some kind of disturbing details. And I mean, after I read that book, I was like, that's it. I'm cutting out meat. I'm done with meat. That was it for me.
And that was at 15, right?
It was just before I turned 16, maybe like a month or 2 before I turned 16. Yeah. So that's when I first became vegetarian.
That's cool. I mean, that's cool that you had obviously you were talking about how your family upbringing really led you to that, because you always had an interest in that. But that's cool at, 15, you had enough like initiative to read a book about nutrition and then act on it. Because I mean, I had like zero interest in nutrition in high school, it's just something you don't hear of a lot.
Yeah.
And that's cool. You responded, you realized like that kind of the lifestyle that your family was into was, they were onto something, because some kids take it as they want to completely rebel or they totally understand. So that's cool that you were on that other path.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that my parents, they were very, I probably made it sound maybe like they were very strict about it, but they were very open. They were very open-minded. Like, it was never like, no, you absolutely can't. I mean, to certain things, it was like, no, you can't have this, but they were never, they were very soft and gentle with us. They were like, and when we would go to the grocery store, my mom would make it really fun for us. So she would be like, okay, you guys can all pick your own cereal, but like on the back of the cereal box, it can't on the like nutrition label. I mean, and it's funny to think about it now that I'm saying it, it's funny, but on the nutrition label, it has to have 10 grams of sugar or less.
So you already had that like awareness to look what's in it.
I was probably like 7 or 8 when she started doing, but it was still fun. So we were like, running around the store, looking at things, and it was fun for us. And, we could still find really yummy and, kind of sweet or whatever tasty cereals that had 10 grams of sugar or less. And what ended up happening, truthfully, is that because our palate was so trained and used to eating healthy foods, that like, I never got a sweet tooth.
Yeah.
You know, like now when I eat sugary things, I'm like, oh, that's too sweet. Like it doesn't taste good to me.
Yeah. It's funny because like, we were talking beforehand about my daughter, and she's 2, like I can already see that her palate is different. Like
Right.
she turns down sweet things all the time. Like we gave her a piece of like vegan chocolate the other day, and she took one bite. She's like, nah, no thanks. So like, it was just, it sounds weird because she's like 2, but it's just like, you can tell already just the palate difference.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's all what you're used to. Like, to be honest with you, my boyfriend grew up with a polar opposite situation. Like, he ate a lot of junk food and had lots of sweets and treats and that sort of thing. And so now, like, I mean, he can have, although his sugar intake has reduced substantially, but he can have like these sweet desserts and cookies and candies and all this stuff. And I mean, it's like nothing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's all what you're used to. It's all what your body's used to, what your mouth is used to, what your taste buds are used to. So, yeah, so going back on my veganism, after going vegetarian for, I guess it would have been when I was 19. I was in my first, or 18. Yeah, I was 18. I was in my first year of university at Western University in Ontario, London, Ontario. And my roommate at the time was also vegetarian, which
that helps.
Worked out. Yeah, which worked out super cool. And she, there was in the common lounge or whatever, they show movies and documentaries and things like that on certain nights of the week. And they were showing one called Earthlings.
Oh man. You guys just traumatized a lot of people, right?
Okay. So I mean, so this documentary, if you haven't seen it, I mean, forewarning, it's graphic. It is it's an extremist.
Instantly graphic.
Oh, it's
instantly.
Yeah. So the documentary is probably an hour and 20, 40 minutes long, somewhere around there. I watched the first 6 minutes and that was it.
Yeah.
And that is when I decided to go vegan.
That's really cool though. Yeah, no, if you haven't watched that documentary though, we're talking about how graphic it is, but really sit down and watch it. It is the truth. Yeah. It's like, you wouldn't want your kids to see it for a reason. It's because it's awful. Right. And yeah, like it's really crazy. Yeah. And it's produced and narrated by Joaquin Phoenix. Right.
Yes.
So it's, yeah, no, it really is a great documentary though. It's just insane what you don't know until you see it.
Until you know. Yeah. You don't know until you know. Yeah. So I think that that's kind of like one of the biggest things when it comes to, the lifestyle that we live. And I mean, even just this podcast and what we're doing today is we're talking about it. I think that a lot of people, they say ignorance is bliss. And that's the truth. If you don't want to know something or you want to remain ignorant to something, then, that's completely your choice and everyone's different and, that's all right. But when you're ready to inform yourself and become educated on certain things, and I think that understanding and knowing what's going into our bodies and how it affects us is so important because, my boyfriend and I were just talking about it yesterday. There's such a big epidemic of people saying, oh, it's hereditary. Oh, it's hereditary. Oh, it's genetic. Heart disease is genetic in my family. Well, what's genetic is your diet. It was your parents that taught that, fed you. And so now that's most likely what you cook and what you eat and so on. And so that's what their parents taught them and so on and so forth. So a lot of the time, it's not necessarily the disease itself that is genetic, but you might have a predisposition to something. But by adjusting things in your lifestyle, you can completely change your path. It does not have to be the same. You do not have to fall into that same category just because it's, you think it's genetic. I think that, but yeah, I think it's just all about education. I mean, just educating ourselves and understanding, how our bodies work and what they function off of.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was very well said. And no, you're right. It's just everything is blamed on genetics. And yeah, sure. I'm sure a small percentage of things are, but I believe the current statistic is like 97% of all diseases are lifestyle though. So it's like,
Right.
and it's crazy because yeah, like you said, like it's not necessarily the disease. You might be more likely to get it if you do those bad things, but it's like,
Right.
what are the recipes your families pass down from generation
Right.
to generation? Like what
Mhm.
is, I mean, typically like you see certain body types, right? In certain
Right.
families as well, but it's like, is their routine every day? They wake up, they eat bad, they don't move, and they watch TV for
Mhm.
6 hours a day.
Right.
Like that
Right.
runs in the family. Like it's understanding those, not only the food but the actions as well, and
Absolutely.
also the
The
mindset as
lifestyle.
well. Yeah, the
Mhm.
lifestyle, the mindset, because it's,
Oh, yeah.
oh man, mindset's so huge because you can tell like if you look at families, just how they act and how they respond to certain situations. It's like, are they following that pattern or are they trying to kind of break that mold a little bit? It's really
Right.
huge if you really dig deep into that.
Absolutely. And, I mean, I know you haven't asked me yet, but as we kind of get into more of what I'm kind of trying to focus on now, and a big part of what I do focus on is making that link between mindfulness, movement, and meals.
I love it.
So it's your three. I mean, you can eat healthy, but if you're not being active, if you're not moving your body and you're not working with your own mind to create, a positive outlook and motivation, ambition, these sorts of things, you can, no matter what healthy food you're eating, things will become stagnant in your body and in your mind, in your life, all over
Yeah.
the place. So it's definitely a combination of things for sure. Diet is just one of them.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're so I love that you're doing that because they are all three just so intertwined together. I
Hmm.
was helping teach a class the other day, and one of the things that I had to jump into was just talking about the correlation with movement and the effect that it has on just overall mindset and mindfulness. So it's like
Yeah.
it's crazy. It's just exercising for like 30 minutes a few days a week. The effects that it has on the brain, like it
Oh, yeah.
helps like your cells grow and it helps the hippocampus grow because what like
Blood flow, oxygen.
yeah it's insane, like it actually like decreases depression because it's affecting the wiring within your brain.
Mhm.
It's super interesting
Oh,
how it affects on like a
so
cellular
amazing.
level. Yeah.
That's so great. It's actually funny. So before our call today, I decided to go to the gym and walked on the treadmill, power walked on the treadmill uphill for 40 minutes. Before we got on the call, I was like, yeah,
So
I gotta
your hippocampus is ready to
yeah,
go.
gotta get my blood moving, gotta get my brain fluids flowing.
That's amazing. Yeah, like so after you made that transition, you obviously you watched that documentary in college, started to really dive into it after that. So what kind of happened after you watched the documentary? What changes happened? What did you find? Like how did it affect you?
So, so it's kind of funny because one of the biggest questions I get asked is, why did you go vegan? Why? And that's changed for me over time, to be honest. So initially, I would say the original reason that I went vegetarian at 15 and when I made the transition into veganism at 18, it was for the animals. I had such compassion for the animals that, endure this awful suffering just so that we can, have a meal on our plate. So originally, I would say my reasoning was for the animals. But the more that I've educated myself and I've kind of dove into the world and the information that goes along with a plant-based diet and the animal agriculture industry and the dairy industry and everything about it, I would definitely say my primary reason now is for the planet. Um, the more I learn, and I mean, there's a couple great documentaries out there, and I know that, documentaries are biased and they're trying to get their point across, and
Sure.
you kind of have to take certain things with a grain of salt, and there's always going to be an opposing position, of course, but I mean, everywhere you look and every time I look up a statistic, it's showing the same result. And that's that animal agriculture is the leading or one of the leading causes of the destruction of our planet in this day and age. And we are sadly, doing things to this earth that are depleting its resources so rapidly that the earth can't keep up with us.
It's insane.
And it's unnecessary. We can live off of, this is a tricky topic for me. I'm pretty passionate about it. So
no, please go for it.
Yeah, but even people to change to a plant-based diet for even one meal a week or one day a week, or, just limit your meat consumption makes a great deal. It makes an impact. And, it's kind of like, oh, well, I'm just one person. If I don't eat meat for breakfast on Mondays, what's that going to do? But if you did that every day for 365 days for the rest of your life, that's like
huge.
That's like 6 pigs. You just saved 6 pigs' lives. Do you know how much water that saved? That saved like 1 billion gallons of water. That's an exaggeration.
No,
but
it's crazy. I think it's like a hamburger. I was just talking to a guest about this as well. It's like a hamburger is like a month worth of showering. Like, it's insane.
It is. Yeah, I think it's like 64,000 gallons of water to make 1 pound of beef.
It's so crazy. It's like people want to make the right steps and like shower less or get the hybrid, but it's like none of that, and that all of that is amazing. Don't get me wrong, but none of that comes in, even touches what would happen if we eliminated factory farming. And it's crazy the impact that it would have. Not to mention the amount of people that are starving that we could feed because we're feeding all of the grains to the animals. Yeah. It's crazy. Like, basically world hunger would be gone. And that's like, it's crazy. Like, there's like studies out there that literally shows that, but we don't do it. It's just a business, right? It's just insane.
It is. And unfortunately, so a couple documentaries that are great to watch. They're easy to understand. They're extremely informative. And again, they might be a little biased, but they're giving you facts. And if you take the information that you're given from these documentaries and you go do your own research, you will see the same results no matter where you look. And that is by the same creator. And the first one was Cowspiracy, and the second one was What the Health. And the first, and these don't have anything to do with animal cruelty. There is one slightly,
I think in Cowspiracy, right?
Graphic image or there's one slightly upsetting scene in Cowspiracy, but they don't show it on camera. They kind of just like show you leading up to it. And then in What the Health, there's one slightly graphic scene, but you don't see murder or torture or anything like that. But the information that's translated in these documentaries is, you can't ignore it.
You can't. Cowspiracy was a huge one for me.
Oh yeah.
I think that one got me into the environment side of it pretty quick. Like, that one is so, like you said, you can, I'm sure there definitely is some biased things, but overall, like, it's pretty eye-opening.
It really is. Yeah, it really is. And it just goes to show you, like you said, it's all a business. It's a revolving door where these foundations that are working or trying to, give you the impression that they're here to help you with your health. The Heart and Stroke Foundation, the Cancer Research Foundation, all of these foundations, well, they're being funded by the meat industry, right? Who are producing products, who are giving you these diseases, who are also working hand in hand with the pharmaceutical companies so that they can sell more prescription pills to you and more drugs to you to, try to manage your ailments. They're all working hand in hand to make a boatload of money.
That's true. And that's biased. Yeah. I know we were just, we're joking about, the documentary being biased, but it's, maybe, but not really, because at the same time, it's like, who's really benefiting from everybody going vegan? Just everybody, like, not the broccoli board or, like, it's just like nothing crazy. So it's just insane the effects that money and government can have on that. I heard this crazy stat on a podcast the other day, and it was just talking about just the increase, just the climate, just the problems with climate change. And if I butcher this stat and you've heard this, like, let me know how I messed it up, because it was something with like by 2040, the toxicity in the air is going to be so bad that it's going to increase airplane turbulence by 140%.
Oh,
isn't that terrifying?
Wow.
Like, that's something like that I never even thought of. And I heard that. I was like, will we be able to fly? Because that's pretty awful. Like, I don't understand. Like that, I think people hearing stats like that can be super impactful, because that actually, that's going to affect you in not too long of a period of time. So that's just insane to me.
That's crazy. Wow. I haven't heard that stat. I'm
going to have to make sure that's 100% right. I think the 140, but it's going to be crazy.
Wow. Well, I mean, that just goes to show, what's happening. I mean, the amount of statistics that have come out saying, if we don't make drastic changes now, we are running out of fresh water on our planet. Which, I mean, it's fascinating because you see all these awesome innovators and tech companies and inventors coming out with solutions to, purify water and clean our oceans and, kind of find alternate solutions to this. But like you said before, the impact that those things will have still does not, although they're phenomenal, and I think we need them regardless, it does not compare to the amount of fresh water that we can save by going, plant-based, or, I always just say reducing meat consumption. If you want to go vegan, by all means, I'm here to support you. If you have questions for me, you reach out to me. I try to be on top of answering my messages or responding to questions as much as I can. And I'm sure you do the same.
Right.
But, I'm fully encouraging a vegan diet, but I also understand that that might not work totally for everyone immediately. There might be a transition period. It can't happen. You can't expect it necessarily overnight, so on and so forth. But I mean, just reducing your meat consumption can have such a great impact on your health and the environment. And I mean, the biggest thing that I say, and it's actually really interesting. So I kind of briefly mentioned before, my boyfriend but ate a lot of junk food and fast food and sweets and stuff growing up. And he's actually now, so when we met, I invited him over for dinner, and I said, but just so you know, I'm vegan. So like, I'm cooking a vegan meal. And he was like, oh my gosh, I haven't eaten something green in years. Like, I don't eat vegetables. I was like, what?
That's funny. Which is pretty common,
Oh my, I was flabbergasted. I'm like, I'm sorry, you don't eat vegetables? This can't be real.
Right.
Lo and behold, over the last 2 years, he has slowly gotten healthier and healthier. And now it's coming up on 6 months that he has been fully vegan.
That's awesome. It's just a process, right? It's like, it's just meeting people where they are and like respecting it. And then you just give them time.
Exactly. So, I never wanted to pressure him. I never wanted him to feel like, I can't be with you because this, or I don't, love you because this, or I don't accept you for being different, because that's not true at all. Because I know it. I mean, it took me 3 years. It took me 15 years to go vegetarian. And then it took me 3 years to transition from vegetarian to vegan. And after I turned vegan, I went on and off of vegan for a few years as well. I've only been fully like strict vegan since I was probably 23 or 24. Because in between the ages of 18 and 23 or 24, I can't even remember now, there were some ups and downs where I was, I had eggs a couple times, or if there was dairy in something, I was like, don't worry about it, whereas now, obviously, I mean, I don't consume anything from an animal, but, so I understand that there's definitely a grace period. There's a transition period, and it's okay. And that's all right, because any small change is still a change.
Absolutely. How's he responded to it?
Phenomenally. To be honest with you, it's actually so funny, because he used to say, like, he's from Alabama. Like, down here, it's all meat and fried food and cheese on everything. And, I think that when we first started dating, it was a little bit not worrisome, but he was like cautious about, like maybe don't talk about it too much, like your veganism and stuff, because he doesn't know how people will respond. I'm like,
Right.
like no problem. I'm sensitive to it because people can be offended by you coming in with such different, ideals and values and that sort of thing. And so I typically introduce the topic quite gently. But I mean, over time, I would present information to him, but I would always ask him first. I'd be like, oh, like I learned some really cool stuff, some really cool statistics today. Like, did you want to hear them? Like,
of course.
Yeah, he would always say yes. And I'd be like, oh, I watched this really great documentary. Like, do you want to watch it? Sure. But I never wanted him to feel like I was forcing anything on him. And I mean, he completely made the decision on his own. So now that he's, I would say probably reaping the full benefits at this point now, the inflammation for him is the biggest one for sure, which is what, you and I were talking about earlier.
Right.
He had like almost just before, I would say, early onset arthritis. He started to get like tons of stiffness in his hands and knuckles and wrists and like joints, because he uses those a lot for work, and his grip strength is very important. Having strong hands is very important for his job. And he was starting to definitely notice that he was like having aches and pains and inflammation in his joints. He said within a week, he noticed a massive difference. And then by like 3 or 4 weeks, he's like, the inflammation was gone. It was completely gone. Yeah. I'll just boast him up a little bit right now, but his body looks better than it's probably ever looked.
Well, it's cool, like hearing that because, because he is an athlete and performs at a high level. So to see how that can, he's not depleted. He is not weaker. He's still performing at a high level. He's stronger. So it's just like, I love hearing that because I feel bad for guys that want to go vegan, because I feel like it is harder for guys to do that because there is such a strong stereotype. Such a strong stigma. And so I respect it so much with guys that do, because it's totally not true. And when you look at like, guys like him, you can see it, right away. So that's amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess I didn't really touch on that topic because I knew you already knew, but yeah. So my boyfriend is a professional baseball player. So definitely his body is his tool for his job. So without his body functioning at its fullest capacity, like he can't work essentially, or he can't produce the results that he needs to in order to be successful at his job. But yeah, he's gotten stronger. He's become more focused. He has lost like the puffiness, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
He's not skinny, but he's leaned out in terms of like his muscles are more defined. His muscle mass is still continuing to grow. He's on a great workout program right now too. But I mean, it's phenomenal. He said he worked out the other week and he front squatted the most weight he's ever front squatted in his life. He'll be 33 this year.
That's amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah. And he's like, it's unbelievable. Like the longer it goes and the more I try to do with my body and my mind and everything, I mean, the more I realize how much it's benefiting me.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. That's so any like World Series wins, we're just going to give you the trophy, right?
Yeah. Seriously. Just pass that ring on over.
That's really cool. I love that. And then what's cool about that though, is people will notice those results from him. And because of, the position that he's in, like he's a role model. So that's really cool that he can just continue to show that it's doable. And it's all of the negative things that are hyped up really aren't true with it at all. So that's amazing. And like, Briana, with the work that you're doing, like you were talking about, you have the mindfulness movement and meals, and you really focus on that, like the whole mindfulness self-care portion of it, like that's been pretty huge for you as well too, right?
Big time. Yeah. So again, this probably goes back to, or not probably, it definitely goes back to my upbringing. I was raised in a very, or I should say my mother was very spiritual. Both my parents grew up religious. So my dad grew up Christian and my mom grew up Catholic. So church and, faith was very prominent in my upbringing. But as I got older, spirituality, more so as opposed to religion, I would say, is kind of what took the front seat in our faith, I guess you could say. I don't know if I'm really wording this properly, but something that my mom always imparted upon us was like to have your connection with, with yourself and with your spirit, and with that of, some people will call it something different, whether that be with God or with the universe or with, whatever religious views you may have. We all may call it something different. But along with that was mindfulness and being in tune with yourself and being in tune with your energy and that of others, and knowing that you have an ultimate role, or I don't want to say responsibility, but kind of responsibility to be true to oneself and to understand yourself and to feed and nourish yourself, because no matter what you do in life and no matter who you want to be or what your goals are or what you want to achieve, if you aren't taking care of yourself first, it is very difficult, or it may not be done right to try to take care of anything else or
absolutely
others. So that was kind of, my mom, we taught us about visualization and manifestation and meditation from the time we were, probably pretty young. I'm trying to remember when that kind of started to pop up in my memory, but it started at a young age. And so I kind of fell into my spiritual journey as an individual. The older I got, it really didn't start to take place until I was in my 20s, really. I think that, I went through, although I was vegetarian, I was not living a healthy lifestyle for many years in my younger kind of teenage and early 20s. I worked in bars and I went out a lot and I drank a lot of alcohol and I partied, and, that became my lifestyle, and it really turned off that spiritual part of myself. It's as if I didn't even have a relationship with myself anymore. And that part of me was lost. And I think that I was very unhappy for a long time because I didn't have that. I lost that relationship with myself. And so when I decided to make a change in my life, and I, decided to I quit the bar life, and I went and I made huge changes. I moved to Australia.
Wow.
A friend of mine was very much into kind of her spiritual journey, and she had been living over there for several years. And she recommended and asked me if I wanted to go out there. And that's really when it took off for me. So I was 23 or 24 at the time, probably. And going over there just opened my heart and my mind and my soul to things that really brought clarity to me, and the big understanding that I took away from that experience and that I continue to try to live by is having your own practice every day and ensuring that you are feeding yourself nourishment, not only through your diet, but through your mind. So, for me, that's meditation or taking a dance class or reading a great book or listening to a great podcast, whatever it may be. I'm constantly trying to feed my mind and my soul, because I think that that's extremely important to, leading a healthy lifestyle. And you got to go full circle. It's got a few components to it, like we were saying before. So
yeah, no, that's really cool. I love that you, were able to take a trip like that, especially, it's still, that is a young age again to kind of branch out and go do that. Like, I feel like you've done things at a younger age or have had more self-awareness at a younger age than a lot of people have, because I'm sure you could kind of speak on people, or maybe friends that I mean, still aren't at that level, but definitely weren't in their early 20s.
Right, right. Totally. And I think a big part of that has to do, again, like with my mom and kind of imparting that knowledge, because she was very much like that when we were growing up. So I'm definitely grateful for her for a lot of that. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey, that's for sure.
That's cool. No, and it's like you were talking about before, just how important it is just to have whatever it is that somebody does do, just to be consistent with it. Because I think what happens is we get busy, and for some reason we've been kind of like brainwashed over time to believe self-care is like selfish. But
Right.
but I mean, obviously we both know like that's further than the truth. Like if I
Right.
slack on taking care of myself, I can't be my best self for others and friends and my
Exactly.
family. And if I'm giving less of myself, then to me that's selfish. So
Totally. It's so funny. My boyfriend and I were just having this conversation in the car yesterday. We were driving back from visiting some friends, and we had this exact conversation. And we were saying, like, people are under the interpretation that being selfish is, taking time for yourself or doing things for yourself. But in turn, it's like you just said, it's actually more selfish to not do those things, because if you can't be good, then you're not good for anyone else.
100%. It's so true. That's amazing. And a big part of your lifestyle, Brianna, is you do have to travel a lot. So how has it been kind of balancing self-care and eating well and staying consistent with everything that you do while constantly moving back and forth, because travel is very hard. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
obviously it's fun to go to cool places, but it's still really hard on you when you're not in one place kind of all the
totally.
time.
Totally. Yeah, so that's actually something that I touched upon. I posted it in my Instagram story one day, and I'm 90% sure that it's in my highlights on my Instagram page. But I'm gonna have to double check just to make sure. But I did kind of like a little, when traveling so much, this is kind of how we stick to eating healthy and how we try to, maintain like keeping up with, I mean, obviously we're keeping up with our veganism, but just kind of trying to stay healthy. And what I always say to people, so for us, typically we stay in a lot of hotels, although we do move a lot, like from, house to apartment to whatever. We do stay in a lot of hotels as well. And pretty much everywhere we go, there's a grocery store that's not too far away. I mean, I've never gone anywhere where a grocery store is not at least, I mean, and sometimes it's a 20-minute drive, but for me, that's worth it. So I always go to the grocery store when we get into a new place, and that's the first thing I do. And well, first and foremost, while we're traveling, I pack snacks.
Right. You have to, otherwise you don't have that panic mode.
Exactly. And anyone who is vegan knows that, I mean, you're hungry more often, for sure, because there's a lot more fiber in your diet, and plants are digested a lot more quickly than, heavier things such as like meat and animal products. So, I mean, I definitely eat more frequently than I would say someone who's not plant-based. But so snacks, I always pack snacks. I always have like trail mix, nuts, protein bars, protein energy balls, oat balls. I mean, even like cut up carrots and cucumber sticks and things like that. So be prepared is definitely one of the number one things that I recommend when traveling. And I mean, even not when traveling, because I think that even just in your day-to-day life, when you're going to run errands or have to go out for the day, or you're going to, an event or a sports game or whatever it may be, having snacks is always something that I definitely try to remember. And then when traveling, like I said, the first thing I do is go to a grocery store and stock up.
Yeah, no, that's huge, because I think a lot of people be like, oh, there's no vegan restaurants. Well, it's like, is there a grocery store? Because you can.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There's always a store.
Let me tell you, I have been to so many places where, okay, well, actually, first I'd like to say there are a lot more vegan restaurants out
Oh
there
yeah.
than we know. I mean, it's crazy. Sometimes I'll go to places I'm like, oh, I'll never be able to find a restaurant. And there's a great app. It's called Happy Cow.
Yes.
And
It's the best.
yes, it is the best. And you can pull up, it brings you to your area, and it gives you the option of looking for vegetarian options on a menu, vegan options on a menu, or fully vegan restaurants. And so I usually just click them all so that I can see anything that,
Right.
got vegan type of stuff. And I've never gone somewhere where there's no options ever.
That's awesome. Yeah,
So,
the options are definitely increasing.
yeah. Oh, for sure. So, I mean, I think you can always find something, but like I said, I always go to the grocery store. I always get a lot of fruit because fruit doesn't necessarily have to be refrigerated. And I mean, unless it's already been cut up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like apples can stay out, grapes can stay out, berries can stay out, not for too long, but, and then again, like protein bars, if you have a little fridge in your hotel room or wherever you are, I always get like hummus and crackers or rice cakes or peanut butter with rice cakes, whatever it may be.
Right.
So.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, no, it's totally doable. I think what you said with just being prepared is probably the biggest thing for sure. And and definitely whenever I put your Instagram in the show notes, guys, go check that out because she's, like she said, she has like a whole post in her highlights where you can really see everything that they do. Cause I think that would be super helpful for people that do travel a lot as well. But yeah, I know. And kind of put you on the spot a little bit because you're talking about books and resources. What books are you loving right now? Or is there a book that you're reading?
I am actually reading, and I was reading it out loud to my boyfriend in the car yesterday.
Dedication.
It's yeah, I love reading to him out loud because he doesn't necessarily love to read, but I'm always excited to share things with him. So, so I, like I said, grew up Catholic Christian kind of mix. But I started to learn a little bit about Buddhism, and I just found it really fascinating. And so I picked up a book at the store the other day, and it's called Buddhism for Beginners. So that's
basically a Buddhism for dummies type of situation.
Yeah.
That's cool though.
And I don't personally take on any specific religious perspective. I think that they all have many beautiful, beautiful lessons and morals. And I mean, I think there's just so many wonderful things to take from an array of religions. But yeah, I just found it really fascinating. I kind of started to read something about it. I was like, oh, that's cool. That's like, 100 pages, whatever. But the other book that I have been reading that I have not been able to finish yet, it's a big one and I've been reading it for a while. It's also very science-based, is The China Project. And so the China Project, for anyone who has not heard of it, is the largest food study to ever be conducted in the world. And it was one of the primary scientists that conducted the study that was done in China is Dr. T. Colin Campbell.
He's a boss.
He is awesome.
Yeah.
So I actually just completed his plant-based nutrition course in August.
That's awesome.
It can be taken online. It's a 6-week course done through Cornell University online. Their e-courses. So yeah, he has an awesome plant-based nutrition course that he does with his son, who's also a doctor. So Dr. T. Colin Campbell is one of the primary scientists that conducted the study, and it's fascinating. I could give you information on it now, but essentially what the study is about is it takes different groups of people from all different areas and parts of China, rural parts, urban parts, and depending on where they're from, their diets vary drastically. And the results show over like this is tens of thousands of people that are in this study, if not maybe even 100,000. I honestly can't remember. But it shows the impact on health and the rate and frequency of specific diseases that appear in parts of China where animal products are consumed more frequently and at a higher consumption. So in areas that are more plant-based have lower risk of everything, like lower heart disease, lower rates of cancer, lower diabetes rates, like everything. So yeah, it's a really cool book. It's a big one, and like I said, I haven't read the whole thing yet, but it's also another great read that's out there. So
yeah, I mean, like you said, like there's so many people in that study. It's something that really can't be ignored. Like it's ridiculous the amount of people. I need to get the actual physical copy of that book. I have the audiobook, but I think it's one of those like I need to actually have the book, you know? It's
I did that too. I downloaded the audiobook first, but it's kind of one of those things where you have to go back and read it a couple times sometimes to really, grasp everything. So that's when I ended up, Amazon Prime.
Yeah. I love it. No, that's amazing. How was the course? Did you love it?
It was really great. I mean, there were parts of it that were, mind blowing. Like I was learning things that I had never heard before that because being in the plant-based kind of life or world for so long, I was kind of like, oh, like I know a lot of this. And I mean, there was definitely things in there that I'd heard before or I knew about, but there was so much information in there that I was like, wow, it was great. Yeah, it was definitely beneficial.
That's awesome. Yeah. And just kind of hit on like some of the stuff that you are working on in the future, or are you just continuing to learn and put more content out there, or what's coming up that you want to share?
Yeah. So my website should finally be up very, very soon.
Awesome.
And what it's going to focus on is I'm actually going to start taking clients for plant-based nutrition kind of diet coaching. But like I said, it's, it's a full circle kind of focus. So mindfulness, lifestyle, diet, but on there's my blog is up on there as well. And one of the blogs that's up there is the first 10 things that you need to know when going plant-based. So I think that's definitely a beneficial piece. Super short, easy to read, nothing too extensive, but just, and one of the things on that list is being prepared snacks. So.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's really cool. So the like the blog portion is not up at all right now, right? It's just the site's going to be coming out as a whole.
Yeah.
Just super soon.
Yeah, super soon. Like hopefully within the next couple of weeks.
Cool. Yeah. No, keep me posted because I'll definitely obviously share it on my end and add it to the show notes and everything. That's exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. I've been working on it for a long time and we've had some ups and downs with it, but it's getting there. So yeah, should be up very soon, and I'll definitely let you know when it's live.
Perfect. Yeah, and then Briana, what is the best way for people to follow you on social media? That way they can keep up with everything that you're working on, you're traveling, and obviously whenever the website comes out.
Yeah, so my Instagram is what I typically use. I mean, that's my primary social media platform that I'm using at the moment. And my handle is Briana Miller, my full name. So that's BRIA1NA Miller. You can find me there.
Perfect. And then, Briana, just closing question that I ask every guest. Yeah. But if you just had one piece of advice for the audience, maybe it's been something that's been your biggest takeaway on your wellness journey so far. But if you just had one piece of advice to give, what would it be?
Educate yourself. Definitely. That would be, educate yourself for sure on whatever it may be. If you have a question about something, or if you think that you believe in something, or you're following a certain diet or program or whatever it may be, just educate yourself. Because I think that doing our own research and answering some questions for ourselves is definitely very important, and it's where a lot of discovery and growth can be had.
Love it. No, that's perfect, Briana. And I'm extremely excited for everything you're working on and excited to follow along as you put your site out and everything you're doing. So just thank you so much for taking time to come on. I loved having you.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing more of what you're doing out there as well.
Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you loved my conversation with Briana. She's doing so much positive work, so be sure to give her a follow on social media to keep up with everything that she's been working on. You can find her social media links that we talked about in the episode in the show notes, but you can also find them on my website as well at drkaseyjohnson.com. That's drkaseyjohnson.com. Click on the Listen tab. Then from there, you'll be able to see all of the past guests that have come on the Unlock Wellness podcast, read a little bit about each guest, and be able to click on their social media links, websites, all of that. So all of Briana's information can be found on my site as well. If you guys loved today's episode with Briana, be sure to jump onto iTunes, subscribe, and write a review. It really helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate all of the feedback and support. Thank you guys so much again for tuning into today's episode. I hope you loved it. I hope it inspires you. And most importantly, I hope you take action.